Okay, the meeting of the Education and Pupil Services Committee will please come to order. Would you please go over the agenda for this evening, Ms. Kelly?
You're welcome. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have 3 items on our agenda. They all will require board action. The first item is the elementary ELA textbook recommendation for Mrs. Ortley. The second agenda item is a math middle school textbook recommendation from Mr. Schwartz. And the third item will be the school calendar for the 1920 school year. We ready to begin? Okay. So as we get started with the ELA curriculum proposal or recommendation, as well as the math, I just wanted to give some background information once again to let you know that this money is from that LEG grant or the legislative grant. So when we're talking about adopting 2 new programs, that money was what we spoke about in the fall of 2018. We already looked at adopting a curriculum for social studies middle school. That came out of this money. The Chromebooks that Mr. Holinsky was speaking about earlier all came out of legislative money. This was the $3.3 million. That was the first pot of that 17-18 money that came through. We also have the other pot of money that is $175,000, which is the 18-19 money, which we have plans to spend that as well. I will get there as we progress into this school year a little bit further. But for right now, these 2 big ones are all part of that legislative grant. So just to get some background information there. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Ortley, who's going to walk us through this ELA program.
Good evening. I don't know how close I have to sit. Members of the board, Dr. McGarry. A little closer. A little closer. Members of the community and Upper Darby School District staff. I can't begin to tell you how excited I was to start this process and to look at new materials for ELA. The whole process in and of itself was sort of one of my dream come true. So you'll have to hold me back a little bit from gushing. I do that so well. But I'm going to give you a little overview of kind of the process that we followed to make this decision or to make this recommendation. And then I'll tell you something about the products that we did look at, which you have a sample of on your tables here and there. Thank you. So we started off by, I called all my friends all over Delaware County and then some. I checked websites. I called other district coordinators and supervisors to see what's out there. And doing a little survey of what's out there, you know, there's really a potpourri of programs and materials that other districts are using. Rather than, you know, go through what each district is using district by district, I know many are also beginning to change and to look at new programs. I would say the materials that many are moving towards are guided reading materials overall. If they do follow a program such as Wonders or Journeys or some of the published materials, they tend to supplement just as we did with our Storytown material. So you can see there's a whole mishmash of things up there, but generally most districts are moving towards a guided reading approach. I also looked at what our needs were based on our school district data over the past number of years. And I looked at it in terms of what we needed at kindergarten, primary, and intermediate levels. At every level, we need introduction and mastery of foundational skills, and that's apparent throughout all of our elementary schools, even through middle school and sometimes high school. So that was critical. In addition to that, we really wanted to make sure that we're giving our students the opportunity to work and think and read rigorous and complex materials. And we also wanted to really develop their writing skills, which is something that you know, we have known has been an issue for our district for a number of years as well. So with that in mind, we'll go to the next one. We came up with a list of, well, this was my shopping list, you know. These were all the things that we thought we wanted. And I met with a group of ELA teachers, ELL teachers, special ed teachers, principals, to kind of brainstorm and figure out what we needed to have in a program before we went and did our shopping. So the core of what I think will help our district immensely will be a very, very strong professional development component to whatever it is that we're looking at, that we can support our district initiatives with our professional development, and that we can support all levels of teachers in our organization, from beginning teachers to the more experienced teachers. With that, these are some of the things, like I said, my potpourri of things that I went shopping with, and then we started shopping. And originally, we came up with a team of about 60 individuals from our district. All of the elementary schools were represented in grades K through 5. In addition, we had members of the ELL staff, special ed staff, principal staff, administrators. All were invited to pretty much all of these meetings. And this is a series of meetings that we had throughout the fall to examine new materials, really to see what was out there and what some of the major publishers were willing to bring and share with us. Through this process, I learned a lot. Some of what I've learned includes that there are really now only 3 publishers of educational materials, 3 large publishers. They would be the McGraw-Hill, which we looked at Wonders, the Pearson products, we did look at MyView, and now HMH, which was a couple of companies combined, was formerly, I think, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, into reading. In addition to that, we wanted to see what Fountas and Pinnell offered, what some of the programs like Benchmark Reading offered, because they're much more of an a la carte kind of program. We wanted to see what was there as well. And then we came to the end of November, where we had all the materials out for teachers to look at, and to look at materials side by side. Here are some of the features of the programs that we looked at. So I'll give you a few minutes to kind of take that all in, and I'll explain some of it to you. So if you go to the far right side and you see Benchmark, Reading Fundamentals, and Fountas and Pinnell, those are the more a la carte programs that many districts in our area are using. Essentially, they are boxes of leveled readers that come to the teacher's classroom for them to use in a guided reading setting. And they're nice materials, they're newer materials. But to get a phonics or word study program or writing workshop, you would have to also then purchase separate kinds of programs. And we did a webinar with the Fountas and Pinnell organization, for example, and they suggested we look at another publisher for writing. So we were interested in that, but again, it was like, well, we're sort of putting the wheels on the bus in separate ways, and I wasn't sure about that. The Wonders program and MyView were very traditional, very much like our Storytown materials. They had, well, in the MyView Pearson, they have an interactive text, which is their anthology. And then they had their guided reading leveled reader books, which were very similar to what we have now, the red book, the green book, the blue book. Blue book being a higher level, the red book being, watered down version of the blue book. And then they say that they had the reading workshop, but again, it was a very traditional scripted kind of program. Also, Wonders was very much like our Storytown materials, and in fact, teachers spotted Storytown stories in the Wonders books. So that didn't sit so well, and they were at a different grade level. And in fact, 4th grade materials were in the 5th grade book. So through process of elimination and having a wonderful team to kind of really pick through everything with me, we looked at the Into Reading Harcourt Houghton Mifflin materials, because they offer a lot of choice, and that was one of the things I really was looking for in a new program. And I'll talk to you more about that as we go through the presentation, but their anthology is an interactive text. That's what you're looking at right now. Students will be writing in their anthologies, writing in the margins, and learning how to annotate throughout, which was a nice feature. The others that had interactive text, by the way, were more like workbooks. So when teachers opened those books up, although the students could write in those books as well, everybody's jumping on that bandwagon of interactivity. There wasn't much room for the students to write their own information in there or their own annotation marks or their own questions. It was more of a workbook approach. So then we had staff vote. We used an IMET, which was from Achieve the Core, wonderful website if you have a chance to Google that. Lots of good materials. Authors of Achieve the Core also were the authors of the new Common Core state standards. So there are materials in Achieve the Core and strategies and things for teachers to use that are aligned to our state Common Core standards. Teachers voted on what they liked the best, and you can see the HMH into reading came in both first and second. Pearson, my view, had some votes. Macmillan Wonders looked nice, so it had to get some nice votes, and it was very much like Storytown. So many teachers were very comfortable with that product. But you can see HMH did become the staff pick. So I'll tell you a little bit about what HMH has and why it sort of hit all of those boxes on my shopping list. First off, they're moving away from teacher in front of the room. This is a definite guided reading, guided writing workshop approach. Teacher will be probably doing a whole group lesson for no more than 15 or 20 minutes at a time or in a day. The rest of that time is spent, it'll be very different from what we're used to, spent doing reading workshop and writing workshop. Then at the end of the session, students will be participating in what's called a wrap-up. They may be sitting in a solo chair, but there are strategies and suggestions for students to do a wrap-up activity at the end of every day. That's okay. So the materials, as you can see, are very collaborative. They promote independent learning, and they focus on teacher-led small groups. So some of the learning centers, for example, that students will be engaged in would be reading centers that could include readers' theater, student choice books, as well as book clubs that the students can run on their own without their teacher. In addition, they may have a vocabulary center where they could practice their Tier 2 words or their big idea words. It includes suggestions for a digital center where students can listen to stories of their choice. They can practice keyboarding, and this program also includes keyboarding lessons. They could also go to a writing center where they could do peer conferencing. There's also handwriting practice included in this, as well as cursive writing beginning in grade 2 for students to practice. And then they have a project center where students can work collaboratively on research projects for every module. So a lot of this is student-led, while the teacher is working with differentiated groups on skills and needs that the students have. So you have a copy of probably grades K through 5 student interactive book. This slide shows you how those interactive books look. And you can see that the blank sides, margins, are for students marking up. These are books that they'll take home when they're done with, and they can share at home with family, read again, and keep. So this will be their book. In addition to the interactive text, every classroom will have a set of these leveled readers. These leveled readers are leveled by Fountas and Pinnell levels and or Lexile levels. So teachers will be able to use these books in a variety of ways. One of the nice things about this program is that it's not scripted for teachers. Teachers are going to be teaching in modules, and each module has a set of texts. It's the teacher's decision to choose how those texts can be used. So for example, the Rigby readers might be used by genre. They may be used by Lexile level. They may be used by skill. They don't match up with the student interactive book. They are books on and of their own, so they're books that the students can enjoy and the teacher can use creatively in that classroom. The Rigby readers, the teachers will be given 2 grade levels, like grade level above, grade level below, to use in their classroom. And if students are needing anything below that level or above that level, those are available on the digital format, so kids can have access to higher level or lower level books if needed. In addition, teachers will be getting authentic trade books, and these are the books that will be used as anchor text and mentor text for the writing activities. These can also be read by children. These can be choice books. That could be a book club book. It can be a student group work, or students can read these independently. But the writing mentor text will be coming from these books as well. And these are not leveled readers. These are, as you can see, books that you could purchase at Barnes & Noble. And then for our little guys, it includes Start Right readers, in case we're wondering, well, what happens to those little ones? They have a lot of instructional materials for K1 and 2. Okay, so there's more. They are also including a digital iRead. iRead is another it's a standalone product that some districts are using for intervention. This is included with our subscription or our purchase of this program if we choose to go this way. iRead is a phonics-based program that students can use, and it will level for them individually as they get things right. It will increase the rigor. If they need more practice, it will give them more practice on the basic phonics and foundational skills. And then the digital component of this, of course, includes screencasts and videos for building background knowledge, articulation videos, as well as professional development materials for teachers to use throughout. And there's more. They packed everything into this program. Can you tell? Like, they didn't leave anything out. So they've also included the work of Carol Dweck, embedded in instruction through growth mindset. Every grade level has posters, and these lessons are embedded into the reading that they're doing. For example, if students are learning about individuals who, push through all odds, then they also have a growth mindset lesson that is about that, and reflection time and writing about that as well. Okay, so we're coming close to the end. Like I said before, HMH has captured pretty much what everybody has been wanting in a reading program. I do like that they do have an opportunity for teachers to use their own judgment based on student skills and assessment data to build the reading program around students. I look through book after book after book to see what were the rules about the spelling test, because I know that's been a big deal for our district, and there are none. So these decisions about what we do about spelling words are there, but there's no prescripted spelling test strategy or anything like that. That will be up to our district to decide. But this enables us to kind of tailor what we need for our K-3, as well as increase the rigor for 4 and 5. And again, I think their vision is that every child succeed. That is my vision as well. These are resources. Are there any questions?
There are a lot of pieces, and we're saying there's one more thing, there's another piece, there's another piece. We do realize that, and we do realize that there is a large amount of professional development that has to go into this. That was one of the reasons that when Rob, Sue, and I started to speak, it was like, we can't do reading and math in the elementary schools at the same time. Sorry. So we need to really focus on ELA right now. In May of this year, we will start the professional development for this program. So teachers will be getting their materials. They will be starting to get a getting to know your materials workshop at that moment. Before that, though, Sue and I will be starting the training as early as February with a core team of people, so that those core team of people become our experts in the buildings. We know that we're large. We know that we are transient with our student population as well as our teacher population, and we have to make sure that the professional development is there. Also built into this program is a 6-year PD plan from HMH, in that every start of the school year, every August, they will dedicate a day to our new teachers so that they each get the same training that year one teachers got on the very first year that we implemented it. It was key for us in this negotiation of this contract, or this textbook adoption, that we knew what we needed as a district as well as what they were able to get to us. And they were very good at working with us to meet our needs. The technology also involved has professional development. Bob and I met about what they are willing to give us. There's a 3-year professional development plan for Bob and his team as well, so that they know how to roll out the pieces that are on the digital platform for the students, how to build the rosters, and how to push out the information to the students. So in year 1 it'll be intensive, in year 2 it'll be a little less intensive, and so on and so forth as we get through the rest of this program. But that was all built into this plan right here.
Open it up to the board. Is there an impact on our report cards? Any changes that would need to take place?
Of course. So the report card will have to change a little bit based on some of these pieces. Our report card was built around a lot around Storytown, but also around the standard. So we just have to adjust a few things, and we are well aware of those adjustments that have to take place.
First, I'd like to thank you, Ms. Kelly and Ms. Ortley, for all your hard work on this. We've been waiting for this. I know that there was a little bit of a delay, and coming from the Education and Pupil Services Committee, we are, we're excited to see the material, and actually being able to touch it today is even better. I just wanted to say that I'm really looking at the material itself right here is exciting because of the illustration, and when you're in elementary school, I can think back to when the teacher would bring in those little packets, those booklets, and they were exciting to open up and read. This kind of encompasses all of that, and I was looking at the global and modern concepts that are in here, like writing a blog entry, things like that, collaboration and discussion, and even going back to Ms. Gentile can appreciate this, the encyclopedia entry. Like, we're not forgetting our past, but we're going to our future. So I really, really just can appreciate looking at it, and I'm excited to see what our children are going to have. Looking forward to actually seeing the 4th and 5th for my own personal reasons, but excited about this. It looks like we're looking at the 3rd grade level.
There's a variety on the table,
okay.
Yeah.
And just one question out of it. Going from Storytown and having that particular curriculum, so for instance, the children that have been in 1 through 3, and then they're going into the more rigorous 4 through 5 coming up, what will that transition look like? I know that you're looking at the professional development, but what do you think that transition will look like for those children who are moving into that different zone per se in that part of the education?
Well, I know that, we've been trying to infuse these concepts into our curriculum now. I mean, so they have had experience with close reading, for example, and writing, text-dependent analysis responses. We have to force that to happen, though, with our Storytell materials. We have to get our teachers on board, and we've been running PD for them. And whenever we do talk with them and they do work on these things with students, they tell me how excited the kids are to work at that level, and how surprised they are that the students will work at that level. So I think what's nice about these materials are it's embedded. And it's embedded in these stories as well as all of those leveled readers come with a teacher guide. And all of those teacher guides include, a high level of rigor as well as a fundamental level of rigor. So teachers can adapt the instruction based on the needs of the students mostly. And that's really where we want them to be. We want them to be thinking about what students can do and move them up. So I think, in answer to your question right now, we are using these strategies and these methods. It's just now it's all packaged for us. But I think, the PD is important, and I'm so glad Christine advocated with this company for a 6-year package. She's amazing, because they weren't on that page. So, but we have that, and we have 6 years of materials from them as well with this purchase. So we're...
I think I would be remiss if I didn't say this, just looking and flipping through this particular text that's in front of me. It encompasses almost all the children that go to our district. And so that inclusion in looking at, in reading and learning is so important, to be able to open a book and see someone who looks like you. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate you and all the teachers who went through and really evaluated that process, because that's really important for our district here in Upper Darby. So thank you so much.
Thank you for a comprehensive presentation. I just had a quick question. Christine, you mentioned building out the rosters for the digital piece to accommodate, the digital platform, and working with Mr. Helinski. Will it tie into the student information program? Is that something that part of the...
It works like Think Central does now. So the students would log into the Think Central platform. It no longer is called Think Central. It's called Ed Your Friend in Learning.
Ed
Is
Your
that
Friend.
right?
Yeah.
Ed Your Friend in Learning is what it's called. So you would log into that platform as a single sign-on, though. That's what I'll work with Bob on, so that students are using the same password as they would as they're, getting onto the computers themselves. But they would be going onto a totally different platform.
Thank you very much.
And the iRead materials is actually a subsidiary of the System 44 and Read 180. So even a week ago, when I attended the System 44 launching the pilot, they included, some information about iRead, and it's just it's marvelous how we can use technology for that kind of instruction, freeing up teachers then to work on reading comprehension and other strategy skills. I think that'll be an important part of this program too.
Thank you, Mrs. Wortley. I did see some very impressive data on their website in regards to their success with this new program, because it is a new text, actually in a district that I'm very familiar with in New Jersey. And it's one of the most underperforming districts in the state of New Jersey. They spend the highest actually amount per student there, and they're seeing great growth. So I'm really excited about this program in particular, especially the annotating, because I think that's a skill that our kids missed. Mr. Desnoyers, did you have something?
I just wanted to ask about support for English learners. Is that, would it be through the iRead program? What are the supports for English learners, given our district has a considerable portion of English learners?
Mm-hmm. So throughout the teacher materials, there are recommendations for English language learners at every level, as well as support for students who need more intensive support. So it's embedded throughout the teacher materials, and then there's an ELL component as well.
Okay. Thank you.
A couple things. Great job. I appreciate it. Sue, and we don't have to pull this up now. I don't want to make Harry pull up an image of this, but a minute ago, backtrack, you had talked about the skills that are necessary. And I know I see some coaches in here and teachers in here. Thank you for your hard work, for being a part of this. When I first joined you at Viawood years ago as a secondary person, what stood out to me as the necessary skill set requirement to have deep level conversations. So one, as Ms. Mitchell calls it, annotation. I learned at the Ames School in Manioc things like metacognitive conversations or talking to the text. And what this material allows us to do is what we've gotten fancy with, which is a metacognitive conversation, is when you read something, you're asking yourself questions, you're making inferencing, you're trying to make predictions as a good reader. And this is helping students and teachers execute that.
Yes.
Right?
Very
So
much.
that's an important part that I noticed on there. And another visual that we can send the board and the public, and we can talk about maybe at a later date that you had talked about, is Scarborough's reading rope. And in Scarborough's reading rope, it talks about how important it is to build the building blocks. Learn to read and reading to learn. And I think what this program still emphasizes here in this district, and we can present this at a later point in time, is that we still have students who come in lacking specific prerequisite skills, decoding, phonemic awareness, things like that. What we've been asking for years that I saw earlier in the slide is this K-2 articulation, or that videos that can go home, much I think similar to what Mr. Desnoyer's question would be, that folks can go home and practice the appropriate way to make blends, to say words, and to recognize those sounds that are being made, and practice outside of school with that single sign-on, accessing what was formerly Think Central to practice at home, correct?
Exactly.
So it'll allow us to put what the Scarborough Rope talks about: background knowledge, vocabulary, language structure, verbal reasoning, literacy knowledge, phonological awareness, decoding, sight recognition. So specific instruction toward independence is what we're trying to build. And this program does that for us. Is that fair to say?
I believe, I'm hoping that that's the case. And one of my other concerns has been teaching to mastery. And I think some of these materials will really help our teachers with that, because it's, it's difficult when everybody's mastering things at different levels to, do I keep on going with the next lesson, or do I slow it down until everybody has mastered it? And that's even been a problem with some of our intervention programs, because some kids will start taking off and others are not. And then the interventionist is left with thinking, where do I go with this? Do I pull, even if I pull those kids aside? Some of these programs will allow children to practice, and you're right, take it home. And I was watching some of the iRead videos. It shows you how to make the sound. It shows you a child's mouth making the sound, has the child practice, and then there's little, avatars that jump around and clap. It's fun. And that's it. I really want children to have the courage to continue pushing through, to see these materials as interesting and interactive and fun, and something that they're willing to do. I had a wonderful experience even last semester here at the high school in academic classrooms, where in 2 different classrooms, boys slammed the table and said, "I love reading now." And I just wanted to capture that. I was like, yes, it just makes, a reading person's day when you see a youngster who might have struggled all along, and because they read a novel that they really could identify with, or characters or authors that they felt a personal connection to, they then loved reading. And I was sad that it didn't happen until 9th grade. So I'm trying to, I would hope that this would happen. This is an interesting program in that it's not workbook or worksheet happy. It is very much book happy, so there's lots and lots of books and reading material and ways to read that we're going to be giving our kids with this instead of a sheet.
Thank you. And it's all adaptive for learning support as well. Throughout, I could see a lot of great things that are going to happen with our inclusion. Is anybody not? Oh, someone else?
One piece I think is missing is maybe a parent element and some parent feedback. So when you get it down, you narrow it down to like two programs or, three. I mean, maybe it'd be helpful if you went to the home and schools and maybe just got a group of parents so we can start getting the buy-in early to think that they're part of the process, and like you survey the teachers, maybe survey the parents when you start to choose these programs, because I think that will help in the beginning. I mean, I'm not sure how many parents you'll even get to participate, but it's worth looking into whenever we make any of these changes.
We did have some teachers that are parents in the district
Oh,
that
perfect.
did serve.
Okay,
and
that's
did
in
stuff
dual roles. That's
in dual
perfect.
roles, so they did get that experience, which was very helpful.
That's good.
And we will keep pushing out information as we get it so that people feel comfortable. Feel comfortable with the materials, like we did at the start of Go Math when we first implemented that.
Can see a lot of literacy nights in our future. Anyone else? Okay, so on to the next agenda item, the middle school math textbook recommendation.
So Mr. Schwartz is going to walk us through the middle school math textbook. This is for grades 6 through 8. Like I said before, it was important that we rolled this out appropriately so that our elementary teachers were not implementing 2 core programs in the same year. So when we were meeting and continuously talking about it, Rob said, why don't I go middle school next and then filter back to elementary school, which was a perfect solution to spending this money the way we had to and meet the deadlines of the grant as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you again for allowing me to speak this evening. After an exhaustive search, I'm really excited to recommend Envision Math 2.0 for our middle school math program. It's the belief of myself and my team of administrators and teachers that this was certainly the right program to help our students meet the demands of the PA core standards. Due to 3 areas of focus. 1, a deep focus on conceptual understanding. They made that priority number 1. Through personalized and adaptive learning for all students, and PearsonRealize.com, an amazing online platform for both our students and our teachers. Authored by a team of experts that includes Dr. Eric Malot locally, who is a professor at Rowan University, who I got an opportunity to speak to a few times. The program includes both 6th, 7th, and 8th grade material, as well as a pathway to Algebra 1 that includes a accelerated 7th grade program. On a macro level, if I can stop it there. On a macro level, the program took the recommendations of the authors of Common Core and NCTM, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, to spend the majority of their year on the major standards of a grade. Their recommendation is about 65 to 75% of the year should be on the major standards of that grade level. It took those recommendations. And on a micro level, focused on 3 areas for instructional design, beginning with a problem-based learning activity, visual learning, and opportunities to assess and differentiate. Step 1, the problem-based learning activity, includes an example like this at the beginning of every lesson. It asks questions such as comparing, what do these 2 plans have in common? How are they different? And it asks students to look at 2 different Netflix-type programs and ask students to make a decision about when is one program better than another. By turning down the math, taking away the procedures, taking away the formulas, it invites students into the math and asks them to use reasoning and sense making invites them to reasoning and sense making without often intimidating them with the formulas and procedures. It gets students to have that productive struggle before they get turned off to the math. That sort of problem-based learning promotes inquiry and conceptual knowledge and allows them to solve problems in multiple ways. The second step of the lesson then includes a visual learning. It's the bridge between what they've already been able to do as far as sense making, and then brings back in, slowly it turns the dial back up and brings in some of that math content to help them make connections between what they don't know and what they already do. That second part of the lesson also includes guided practice. And before offering students a chance to apply, and have that practice that, we're used to seeing in math programs, what I thought was really smart is it included questions such as, do you understand? Meaning, do you understand the concepts? And do you know how? Do you know how to solve a simple problem? Before giving them the rigorous practice that, we're typically used to seeing in a math program. The third step of the lesson is, as a culminating experience, it offers a variety of ways to assess the student's learning and differentiate. There are a variety of differentiation activities as far as enrichment for students who are ready to kind of push forward, and students to, and opportunities to remediate at the right time. All these resources are available to teachers and to students on the Pearson Realize platform. But along with the print materials, it also offers a large amount of digital resources as far as games, activities, instructional videos that we really believe, again, make learning interesting and exciting for students, as opposed to, again, being intimidated by the numbers and the formulas that typically bog us down. Teachers have the opportunity to change their lessons, to look for videos and instructional materials to present things in different ways. And I'm really excited to see the ways in which they take their lessons. They have an ability to assign activities for students. If they're assigning activities for one group who are ready to do one thing, other activities for students who are ready to push on, as well as being able to customize and build tests to assign them for students to take, either to print out and take paper and pencil, or even to take online for that instant feedback for teachers and to have that data available at their hands. There's a variety of options for students to engage as well. As far as, online, there are games and activities that the teachers will assign to them, but there's also opportunities for them for homework help. They call this the virtual nerd, which I actually think is a terrible name, but they call it the virtual nerd that allows them immediate access to homework support and help for instructional videos that you can see is available both on a laptop, tablet, or even easy access on their cell phone. And what I thought was really neat is many of the pages in the book are also scannable through a downloadable app that they can just take their phone, scan a page, it immediately reads the QR and provides them instructional support right at that time. It also provides digital feedback and digital practice for students, again, through that assignment from the teacher's side. And again, it's a way to make the math accessible to all of our students and give them an opportunity to engage in a way that does not turn them off of math. Ultimately, my biggest challenge is helping all students see the beauty and the creativity in mathematics. We see it in our youngest students, in our preschool age students, when they complete a simple puzzle, when they build Legos, when they stack blocks. And somewhere along the lines in K-12 schooling, those negative feelings about math, develop. They develop in our students, they develop in adults. And typically, the research has said that most commonly the reason they turn off is they see math as something that is rigid. They see something that has no room for creativity. It's a way of following steps and following procedures, and if they can't memorize things, they can't be good at math. I'm excited that Envision recognizes that challenge. I'm excited that Envision kind of shares that belief that I have that that math is beautiful and exciting and interesting, and that they've expertly crafted a program that invites students into the math as opposed to kind of pushes them away. So, thank you.
The part with the virtual nerd, although the title may be awful, I think about the benefits of that as a parent. So I have an 8th grade student who is in Algebra 1 right now, and my husband is like, if you weren't here, I don't know how I would be helping him right now. He said, I Google things when you're at a meeting like this. So this is a very important tool because for for people that don't use math every day, Algebra 1, you don't remember how to do it. So that students have this at their fingertips, parents have this at their fingertips is a very powerful tool, I think, for our students and our teachers and our parents.
I did see on one of the pages that it appeared that you could change the language. So I'm just wondering for parents who might need that accessibility, it seemed like it was available on one of the slides.
I know there are English language, activities built into to all the lessons as far as helping them develop that content understanding. I believe the online piece has it translated into Spanish. I do not believe that they have every other language there. But I know that that's a challenge that we're constantly facing, and I think through help of our ELL department, I think we'll figure out ways to make it accessible to all of our students.
Does anybody else have any?
Yeah, I would just like to say, I'm really impressed with this. I can tell you guys are excited about this as well. I think it's really interesting to see how you've incorporated technology into this whole program around concepts and problem-based. This certainly isn't how I learned math when I was back in high school, so I think this would have been a much more interesting approach. So I'm really looking forward to see how how it plays out in our district. I think this is pretty exciting.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I was speaking, with a parent a few weeks ago who mentioned that she is struggling to help her child, I think who might be in 2nd or 3rd grade with their homework. And she said, I hate math. I was never good at math. And, I'm trying to help my kid and I can't help him. And I said, my thought was, well, perhaps if you were taught differently, and that's, I think, why math is moving in this direction. Perhaps if you were, didn't see it as something you hated, if you learned to love it, the way I do, the way that, Ms. Kelly certainly does as a former math teacher herself, perhaps it has something to do with the way it was taught.
And I would just like to say, being one of those parents where math was not my favorite subject, how are we going to engage the parents to come on board? That's always a real concern as we change curriculum. There's these great programs that you all bring to the table, but how do we get the parents to understand that all of this great access is out there and to really help them to feel engaged with it?
I mean, in the past, we did do parent forums when we did Adopt Go Math, exactly like Ms. Jordan just said with the ELA program. We may have to investigate how we could even push out that information through, a YouTube or through Facebook or something like that, so parents are included in this learning process. I think that we're going to have to get a little creative on that, but I do think that this team is more than willing to think outside the box on that.
Yeah, I mean, there are tons of great resources, and I'm happy to speak to kind of dispel some of the myths about Common Core and new math and all those pieces. Because while there are things about Common Core and the PA core standards that I disagree with, that belief that we're focused, that we should be focusing on not just how to do something, but why we're doing it and when is the right time to do it, I think really will make sense to people when they have the opportunity to engage.
Yeah. I have heard that the transition to Envision is particularly challenging, and I wanted to ask if you have a high level of confidence that there's enough support in terms of PD and other resources for staff mostly.
So before I talk about the PD side of it, Envisions is, for teachers, it is a challenging program. There's math content that is kind of built in that they need to know to be able to deliver it. I would say that from where we were 5 or 6 years ago when we made the decision to go with Go Math, our teachers, at that point, we're at a different spot. That we feel really strongly about where our teachers are now, that transition will not be such a bridge. And work with our consultant, Tina Fulgham, for Making Math Matter, who will tell you that Envisions is her favorite program, and 6 years ago she wouldn't have chosen that for us because of where she thought we were as a district. But the work that we've done with teachers, the work that we've done with her, she'll say that we're now ready to make that step. So that transition really depends on the staff that you have, where they are mathematically, and our ability to PD, which on that side, Pearson's really provided significant hours and days of PD over the 6-year life that we think is going to make this work and work well.
Thank you.
Thank you for a comprehensive presentation. When is this going to be implemented? Is this next year for the? Okay, so this is of particular interest to me since my daughter's going into 6th grade. So I'm curious about the parent piece. So how do I, I'm chomping at the bit. How do I get on board? How do I get engaged so that I can assist her? I do have a math background, so I'm eager to be one of those parents to help my daughter stay ahead and, jump right in. So how do I do that?
So our rollout includes, February, all the teachers will get, the first chance to meet with me to discuss. In May, Pearson's coming out to work with them. We hope to have that information, all the information for them, all the, the materials for them. When we get back to school in September, I'll have to work with Bob again to get everyone enrolled. But once we do, then we'll get that username and password out. If anyone who wants to get in on it now, I should probably figure out a way to get parents the opportunity to go onto the online site to kind of play around and see the options that are there.
I would like that.
Happy to do it, Mr. Brown.
Quickly, Christine and Ed, is it possible that we could talk to these two companies and prior to breaking for summer, run a parent night here and then record that and then put that on the website, getting the parent access? Even if we don't have a lot of folks maybe attend a parent night on these new two products, we will record that. And as we kick this off in the summer, keep pushing out almost like anticipation that September you're going to get your number, you're going to get it, go to this website ahead of time. I think much to Gina and Ed's point, build the momentum up so that when they're released, we have these videos and we've offered that forum. So maybe in the spring, hold 2 different parent night forums, maybe on the same night, half an hour here, half an hour on that side, and mix it back and forth. Record it, Jay, and we put it on the website if we can do that, and have the two companies here for that. Thank you.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions about this recommendation? All right. Thank you so much.
Of course.
The next item is the long-anticipated school calendar for next school year.
Not nearly as exciting as math, but. So the district calendar, the one-page calendar, is available on board docs to everyone, the public including, and the board as well. What I did was I highlighted a few key points because looking at that little tiny calendar on the screen is usually not helpful. So just a schedule or a real quick breakdown of some of the key dates that we have. We will begin with the teachers on the first day, August 20th. So the students' first day would be August 26th of 2019. The winter break is December 23rd to January 1st, meaning returning to school on January 2nd, similar to this year. This calendar mirrors a lot of what happened last year, or this current school year that we are in. With winter break returning on January 2nd. We still have a spring break of 1 week, so it would be April 6th to the 10th, leading up to testing that comes right after that, which I will show you in a second. Graduation, pending no snowstorms or anything like that, or crazy weather things, or Eagles parades or anything. Sorry, Mr. Brown. June 9th would be the graduation. And then the last student day and teacher day would align this year to June 10th. The reason that it would align this year and not the current year that we are in is because we're trying to front load our professional development with 2 new programs coming in, especially as big as an ELA and a math program. It's important to front load that professional development, so we would have 4 professional development days in August for our teachers, leaving the last day, that Friday day, as a teacher work day so that they are in their classrooms preparing, and then Monday for the students to come into school. So that's a real quick snapshot. The next piece is some of the dates, the assessment dates for Keystones and PSSAs. We really don't have much of a say here. I will point out, though, PSSA testing is much later than it has been, which we anticipated. There was a lot of talk about pushing PSSAs towards the end of the school year. At one point, it fell in March. Now it's getting closer to the end of April and into May, which is great, so you have more instruction time with your students. ELA will span over the 3 days, the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, so they also shortened the windows. They shortened the window last year. It's again shortened this year, so this will be our 3rd year with a shortened window. Math as well, 2 days with math testing. It's April 29th and 30th. So, and I did reach out to PDE this year just to make sure that the dates were correct because of the wiggle room that we had last year with the testing window and with spring break falling there. The reason that I did that was because the primary election falls on April 28th of 2020. So I wanted to make sure that we did not have students in the buildings during that time, which fell right in the middle of math and science testing. So when I reached out to PDE, they said April 29th and 30th to test math was fine. It stayed within the window, and science only needs 1 testing day. It's only 2 testing grades of 4th and 8th that would affect on May 1st. Conferences in the fall, again, they lead up to the days right before Thanksgiving. That has not changed. And then we have our spring conferences in March 26th and 27th, right at the end of the 3rd marking period. The early dismissals would remain the same, that we have 8 monthly early dismissals, and we would have an all-district early dismissal on the Wednesday before the Thanksgiving holiday. So that's really the calendar in a snapshot. It does, like I said, reflect a lot what we are doing this year in this 18-19 school year. So are there any questions? And the union has had the calendar to talk about. The principals have had the calendar to meet and discuss with their teams with. We've had very little feedback, only little minor things that we had to adjust just with formatting pieces. But other than that, we have not had a lot of feedback on any changes that needed to occur at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Anybody have any questions or concerns?
Just wanted to thank you for the legend, for all of the colors on the other one, so that was very helpful.
Thank you.
So when did we start? We started the 26th this year, too, right? Or the 27th?
Started on the we started on the Tuesday, a Tuesday and not a Monday. This year we would start on a Monday.
On a Monday, okay. So here's the obvious question that I think a lot of people are thinking about. What's our plan? And you can certainly chime in as far as a 2nd year in a row series of heat waves right when school starts and stuff like that. So
We'll have Dan Norelli make the decision. No. By the way, we beat him to the 2-hour delay, if anybody's keeping tabs. What's interesting about this, and I guess folks can do this study, when I used to do the calendar before Christine took it over, we used to do a study, actually look at the weather, heat in August, heat in June, and predominantly they were similar weather patterns. So it's an idea of, do you stay later in June or do you start in August, and what's the decision there? I think for us in the school district, we're going to communicate with our teachers union and our staff, and obviously relax the dress code for staff as well as for students if need be, and allow water. But if we have to call early outs or make decisions based on a heat wave, we'll make those decisions and not hesitate to make them for the students and for the staff. I think we're always going to be kind of in a catch-22 as far as starting in August or starting late in June. It's always going to be an issue for us as a school district because our facilities are not air conditioned, which will be the upcoming high priority items in future budgets, which would be renovations to buildings to make them a situation where in this day and age, we shouldn't have to worry about not having school because of heat. But we'll definitely take that into consideration. In particular, schools such as Stonehurst, Beverly Hills, Bywood, some of those buildings on the top floor get more warm than others. And we have to take that into consideration as we make these decisions, and we will. I'll rely on Frank and Dr. Manfrey to talk to us, and Dr. Council communicates with the teachers union, and we'll make those decisions, and we won't hesitate to call an early out or a late start if need be.
You're saying it's a 6 and 1, half dozen the other. Either we're going to have an early out in June because of heat, or we're going to, if we go later in June, or we're going to have an early out in the beginning of the year because we're starting earlier. But basically, if we look at it, we're having to call an early out because most of our buildings, or a number of buildings, aren't air conditioned and it's hot. Okay, so, thanks a lot.
I would say, honestly, even starting in May in this school district, the facilities are more than warm in May. I'm hearing yes. So, it's a reality that we have to face, and I think the next piece of this, as we move through the other facility updates, we've got to consider those renovations to our buildings as far as that's concerned, because window units and things like that aren't going to cut it. And much to the discrepancy of what some might say, it seems to be getting warmer, and if that's the case, we've got to address some of those things moving forward with our buildings. Because we can't use heat in the schools, or not having heat, as a reason to close schools either. So we've got to come up with remedies moving forward.
I really appreciate the clarification. Thanks.
In looking at the situation with the heat, the extreme heat last year, and I actually spoke out about it, is the fact that when we start earlier in August and we have to let children out, it does, in my opinion and what I've seen, it gives them a late start on what the school year looks like. So if they're already in and we're letting them out later, of course, that you're going to miss time as well in the latter part of the year. But when you're starting out, and there were other school districts that were around us, and we were talking about this, and the fact of the matter is, if you go through a whole cycle of that first week and you don't get to see some of your teachers, your reading teacher, you're actually behind. And so I would encourage us to really look at that, because, what happened last year here in Upper Darby, William Penn School District, Philadelphia, we talked about that very publicly in Philadelphia, where they invited school districts from this area who were in the lower, not funded properly and didn't have air conditioning for their schools. And so one of the concerns is, and Philadelphia went back to starting after Labor Day. So I just would encourage us to continue thinking about that, because if you start children out in the beginning of the school year and they're already getting out and they're not getting what they need at the start, I think that looks very different than the end. And so I would just encourage us to continue to look at that, because, when it comes, and, we have the PSSA testing, you figure the children in neighboring school districts that have air conditioning, that this is not a problem at all. They're getting everything they need, and they still have to take their PSSA testing on the same dates, and the expectations are that our children are to have that same instruction at the same time. So I would just encourage us, not that I'm trying to have an extra long summer, because sometimes September can be extremely hot, but I would encourage us to look at that, because I just think the beginning, the starting point is extremely important versus the end. Thanks.
Well, things to that point, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you saying September is warm. Two things. One, I'll be on a panel tomorrow in Philadelphia with State Representative Rabb in Philadelphia discussing fair funding, and I'll be sure to make a point that this is another issue that we face that some school districts don't face, which is facilities issues that are there. I think the other part of this is it's hard to make a decision in pushing back the end of the school year into June or to start it at that period of time. Spring break is another issue on this calendar to be considered, because a lot of school districts do not have, I'll be unpopular for this, but a lot of school districts don't have that full week of spring break any longer. It's wrapped around a longer weekend instead of that full week. So that's a consideration moving forward as we build this calendar, much to your question. You're always robbing one area for another to fit in the teacher days in the contract and the student days. Under Act 80, there's a minimum number of student days that you have to get, and then when you don't hit that, it turns into a number of hours that we have to meet state requirements. So I always joke around in the school district for some reason, when it's sunny, we go to school less, but if it snows, you would be in school maybe a different period. I'm sorry, so we go longer when it's sunny, but when it snows, we don't necessarily make up some of those days. So there are other things to consider as we look at this, but I think spring break moving forward, in conversations with the teachers union, maybe a period of time where that entire week off is something that maybe is not there. We're one of the few school districts that has that entire spring break period of time, and that maybe could free up that time where we might not be in June as long, and to your point, maybe not start as early in the school year.
Are there any other comments or questions about the calendar? Okay, at this time, we'll enter into public comment. If you have a comment, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Colleen Kennedy, 8723 Westchester Pike. I have two quick questions. So first off, with the early dismissals as a result of the heat, I'm wondering how many students probably are going home to similar conditions, and if that's the case, if sending kids home early because of the heat is an act of safety or more like a liability issue. I'm just like wondering if there are problem-solving things that we can do as a school community to make sure that we're keeping the kids safe during a heat wave day, rather than just saying, oh, it's really hot here, let's send them home. That's my first question. And then my second question, and it's as a result of that you're going to see Rab tomorrow, is do we know if there's any movement on PlanCon?
Dan, I'm going to have you answer that, but I don't believe there is any move on PlanCon at this moment.
Okay.
So I'll start with your second question. No, at this point in time, there doesn't seem to be any movement on that. As a school district, once we finish sharing with the board and the public the facility idea at Clifton Heights and then the 69th Street, we then provide the board with options. One being borrowing, issuance of bonds to do these renovations and this work. And then obviously we'd have this facility work and facility study that we should be keeping up. That's why we have the capital project list. Every so often keeping that project list up so we don't have to do this whole study again, and then have that ready to go every year to 2 years so that if we did PlanCon were to open, we would meet those requirements. Secondly, to answer your question, Colleen, I could tell you as a former elementary school principal, whether it's sunny and hot or snowy and cold, when we send kids home early in this district, it's a concern no matter what the temperatures are. So I would say that we are always weighing heavily the issues that our staff faces by having to getting home. So if I'm a teacher at the high school or middle school and my kids are getting let out in Westchester or somewhere else, we hear from the staff, there's nobody home for my child, I'm at work. I worry deeply about releasing kids early regardless. And this came up at the Palava Hut meeting that we had, I guess 2 weeks ago or whatever in the community. Our folks are working, so who are we sending children home to if the expectation that school is open? What we have come to understand in Upper Darby is the sooner we make the announcement in advance and not 5 o'clock in the morning, the better we serve our community to have that happen. So my answer to you is get out ahead of it, make the decision, deal with the consequences, but give people enough time to make home accommodations. That's how we're going to handle that as much as we can. But we are torn every time we make that decision.
My last point, and I'm sure this is probably already being done, but I just wanted to reiterate that if we can communicate to legislators some of the safety issues that are coming as a result of the facilities struggles that we're going through, we can really try and put some pressure on them to take action on this.
Thank you, and as you know, we do spend a lot of time advocating, Ms. Kennedy. Next.
Hi. Mary Reichard, 606 Foss Avenue, Drexel Hill. For the kindergartners, will the Wilson Foundation still be a part of the new curriculum, or is that going to be going?
Our original plan was to use the foundations as our phonics instruction for kindergarten going forward. However, the new program also has a very sound phonics base as well. So we were going to meet as a district with the district team to look at both side by side and make that decision. We can replace the one with the other. That's not off the table, but I also don't want to make that decision hastily now that we're looking at the new materials.
Okay. And my second question is, with the current structure of the MTSS, with the ELA and the kids rotating to their groupings, will that continue with this new curriculum? Will that change or look different?
So we currently have a 90-minute period of time for ELA instruction and the additional 30 minutes for the intervention time. We can look at that as a 120-minute total period of time to include intervention. So we will not stop doing interventions for students who need intensive interventions. The materials themselves, though, loan themselves to interventions that might have been done by classroom teachers, such as literature circles and those kinds of programs we were running separately from our curriculum now are part of these new materials. So we'll look at it differently, but certainly we're going to be continuing to use the same assessment processes and determining who needs more help, and we'll, of course,
so
use
will the
our...
grouping still kind of happen, like the leveled grouping?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
And then my last question is for the MTSS math that currently is just happening within the classrooms. I've been informed that it's a scheduling issue that has to be approved through the school board. And what is the process to be able to have a similar structure for the math that is currently happening with the reading, so that the grouping can happen amongst the classrooms as opposed to just grouping with one teacher within the classroom?
Yeah, I think, we're in the process of still trying to figure out the best way to make that work. I think there are advantages of, switching amongst a whole grade. There are advantages of staying within your class as far as, time is concerned. But I think, we are certainly trying to figure out the best way to make use of that time. I think we're doing, I think the coaches have done, the elementary coaches have done an amazing job kind of putting that, into a more tight structure at all of our schools. But knowing that, we're making a move for a new math curriculum probably after this year of ELA as part of that leg grant money, I think all things are going to be back on the table as far as doing it the right way. And then what the, curriculum kind of, is, what the piece of the curriculum and the remediation source are there are going to kind of dictate that as well.
Okay, so then it's looking for the math to be changing the following year. So next year would be, for elementary school, the reading curriculum will be changed next year, and then the following year looking to changing the math curriculum. Is that correct? That's it. So this current elementary reading would be this year, and then the following year would be elementary math?
Yes. I also wanted to talk about the intervention piece. So in math, unlike reading, where there's a lot of different intervention programs, math, there's not many, if at all, intervention type programs. So it's identifying a skill and then finding a way as a teacher on how to break down that skill so that the student understands it. So is it going all the way back to a concrete learning that the student may need to understand fractions, or is it more on a representational level? Where is the need? But the intervention programs are much different for a math program, unlike the reading programs where there are many.
Right.
So we've been using MAP as that testing tool to figure out what those skills are that the student needs, so that the teacher can figure out the building blocks so that they are able to access the math material that they are learning now.
Well, then also kind of looking at the hiring, because I went to the gifted program that you did 2 years ago, and talking about how to reach the higher learners who might not meet the threshold for gifted, and how to accelerate their learning in the math. And I just thought that the way the reading is structured, to break them up, I understand about the different things, but be able to group those students in the math to be able to enrich their learning at their level, to be able to push them more, to be able to get into the 7th grade program to work towards algebra, as opposed to staying in 4th grade math, kind of jumping. But if there's a way to...
I would say that the key to that isn't necessarily, doing more math quicker. It's we need to find ways to deepen their understanding, their ability to talk about math, think about math, reason through problems, that is going to be the best fit to kind of advancing, all of our students, especially those at the higher end.
Two things. One, in your presentation, Rob, and I spared saying this publicly, but I think it speaks to the question of interventions. I was going to ask that because I saw the RTI icon. Great questions, by the way, so thank you for being engaged. Number one is the problem in math, and it's interesting that somebody says it's a scheduling issue. I would say it's a personnel issue, meaning we don't have enough staff. The district was built at the elementary level, and this is one of the things we want to push as a district, is make our elementary schools the best in, like old school, reading and math, foundational skills. We used to have additional reading supports in the elementary schools, and I guess it's now 10 or 11 years ago, they were cut. So we're even behind in that support that we're going to try to bring back as we talk about staffing. Secondly, at the elementary level, math-wise, because the focus on national level on reading was so big that, and the state test was different in math, and students were doing okay under different standards. When that math shift happened and the standards changed, districts didn't build a lot of extra personnel for interventions. So in the past, we were able to move kids around for reading because we had extra reading specialists. There weren't certified math specialists to go out and be just an hourly tutor or a position there. As a district, we've been creative, creating 2 half-hour sections in the newer schedule for elementary school to have intervention time. The problem became staffing it. So if we break your students up after they're getting their core math, high-level close to the high level, middle level, and then needing additional resources and supports. The issue then became staffing that, having an hourly tutor come in who's a math degree, which there are fewer and fewer of those to hire, and then a specialist like a reading specialist in a math specialty area to do that. That's a priority for us moving forward as a district. We need to get those resources, no disrespect to anybody here who's a secondary person, in the most important areas. K-5 education has to be a high priority area in this district. That's one. Two, what I saw was interesting that was lacking, I think, in previous opportunities in math in the district intervention-wise, is the one slide that shows, I don't want to use the terminology of the online help, that phrase that we don't want to repeat. It will allow students to go to an intervention and also work through it as well with the technology we have in the district that was lacking in math, to redo those, which I think you were saying well, Rob, in math, practice those skills again with tutorial help and tutoring help in that online setting in the school in an intervention area, and then have teaching assistant going on that might allow the teachers who are doing the intervention with larger kids to have that small group work using the technology that we have. Here's some online work, here's a video tutorial, practice these skills as I work my way around the intervention to find those skills that are there, and group the kids that way would be a good way to attack that. It's a personnel issue, I think, from my perspective, not just a scheduling issue. There's only so many hours in the elementary school schedule, and the focus in most school districts is on reading, is having the most amount of time in an elementary school schedule. It eats up 120 to 150 minutes a day in most school districts, if that helps.
The gifted component too. Really, when you look at RTI math, there's three components, right? The procedural fluency, conceptual understanding, and application. I think you're referencing the application part with expanding on what the students know and how they're going to apply it in higher level, right?
Yeah.
So students do have that opportunity in that math RTI, whether they are the high flyers or they're gifted students. Their needs still can be met in a variety of ways with that application component, and how the teacher delivers opportunities for them to expand that in that time frame. So I don't want you to think that there is not opportunity in math RTI for a higher achieving
Yeah, because
students.
I've seen the teachers doing that, but it just feels like there maybe could be more to reach some of those higher functioning students.
And there's a lot of research out there on cluster grouping with students who are gifted and who are also high achievers as well. So that's more of like a homeroom type opportunity than would be for 30 minutes a day. But good question.
Thank you. Oh, thanks.
Are there any other comments from the public?
Suzanne Brittis, 319 Austin Drive. I had questions regarding the math. When we had Go Math and we did the implementation of that, there were issues because the program was set up assuming that you started out in kindergarten and you saw the whole program through. So the higher the grade level we implemented the Go Math, the more complicated and difficult the transition was. Do we anticipate seeing that same issue with this new math program?
Not the same way we did with Go Math.
Okay, because I had an 8th grader the first year of the Go Math, and it was like a wasted year of math. So I wouldn't want to see that occur again.
So it's not a programming issue as much as it's a standards issue. The programs are all written to meet the standards. That is how they do it. They're not making the executive decision on what to cover at what grade level. The standards dictate that. And I think the issue when we brought in Go Math at that time was, that was the time when the state made the switch from the PA academic standards to Common Core. And so things that are were typically covered in 6th grade, we're now in 5th, and things that may have been in 8th grade, we're now in 7th. And I think when we made the switch, it wasn't in the programs, but it's when the state made the switch for standards, that's where kids were caught for that year.
Well, also too, the Go Math has a lot of spiraling, and so it assumed that you had the previous material because it was constantly spiraling. So if you didn't have the material or you weren't taught the way it was taught, you kind of were lost. So,
and that's why what I really like about the new program, that project-based learning piece at the very beginning, that starts, focusing on, number sense and reasoning, and a really, heavy dose of focus on the standards for mathematical practice, which are the 8 habits of mind that we want students to have mathematically. Things like attending to precision and critiquing the reasoning of others. That by engaging in those activities and really focusing on those habits that we want mathematical students and thinkers to have, what that starts to do is it starts to unlock the boxes a little bit. And that fractions isn't just fractions, and geometry isn't just geometry, but they're all intertwined. And so what I really like about the program is, again, it gives them opportunities to engage in real mathematical thought, that if there's a piece that may have slipped by a couple grade levels ago that you didn't get, the boxes are unpacked a little bit and you're able to kind of make that link because you can think through problems. And their hope is that that will start to fill in some of the gaps the more opportunity they have to engage in that those sort of activities.
Now, is this curriculum going to be as heavy with the reading and writing the way the Go Math was? So children who have reading and writing disabilities are going to encounter issues, and does the differentiation in this program, is it able to address those types of situations?
Yeah, I mean, there will always, when you start to teach mathematics now through kind of authentic problem solving, there's always going to be a context that you're trying to process through. I think what part of the training with the teachers is helping them make the decision that and figuring out when is the reading a reading problem and when is the reading a math problem, and what does that mean? And that will come with some of the professional development for the
Yeah,
teachers.
because I know with Go Math, by like 3rd, 4th grade, everything is word problems. So if you're having issues with comprehension and so forth, you're kind of SOL to a certain degree.
And I will say on the other side of that, that there are students who are really good readers who aren't really good math readers, because it's it's a different part of thing to try and take information and look at it structurally. That a lot of the PD will be not just on using the program and using the platform, but on instructional pedagogy and how to teach math in different ways. And we hope to kind of take care of some of the issues.
Okay. And then as far as the parent engagement piece, Mrs. Curry, Mr. Brown, and Mrs. Jordan really think that that is very, very important. I did attend some of the Go Math ones. They were helpful to a certain degree. I also think it's something that you should do continuously the whole time you have the curriculum, rather than just when the curriculum is first rolled out, because the families that didn't have children that were impacted and came in later kind of ran into a lot of issues. And I think to a certain degree, because the Go Math was so different from what they grew up with, they completely disengaged themselves from being a part of their children's learning as far as that goes. Like, I know families that just, if the kid didn't know what they were doing with their homework, they just sent it back, and they didn't even really, they just disengaged themselves because they weren't able to be reached and be a part of helping their child.
I do think it will be important that we use technology to help parents, so either pushing out the information somehow so that they do stay, a chapter or a
No,
section
but not just like
ahead
next year
also.
or the following
No,
year,
I
like
understand.
the whole 6
Yes.
years, if you get the whole 6 years, and even with the language arts as well, I think it's very important that the whole time you are offering that particular program, you're offering those opportunities, because if you're not here during that window, you lose out. And I think that, if you want the parents to be engaged and you want them to be a part of this and you want them being partners, then they need to have those opportunities.
Part of that also when we implemented Go Math, like Mr. Schwartz has said, is that the standards shifted significantly for all of us. So keeping up with the professional development with the teachers as well was hard at first. I think now our teachers are at a much different spot, like Mr. Schwartz said during his presentation, that they are going to embrace this new program.
The online resources look like are going to build in some of that as well.
That did look good.
But I did want to say, I have some friends in other districts who are also implementing new math curriculum at the same time that Go Math. They didn't use Go Math, other programs, and they all experience some of the same challenges that we have because of the standard shifts. So I think those are all things that we can bring back to legislators too, like with the Department of Education, even on a national level, when they do change standards, that it really does affect our students, because it's not easy to make shifts like that. So
Eventually, people were making their own YouTube videos for Go Math, so you sometimes could find those online. And if you found one for the correct lesson that your child was doing, that was helpful. So, I mean, I do like the fact that this program has that already built in, and you're not relying on other people's creativity to sort of help you along. So I do think that's a positive. But the transition, it was pretty rough. So
When the big fight from the school district will continue to be first, and I know we saw this slide, I'd like to see the left-hand part of the slide kind of go away eventually. Because the reality is that you're chasing your tails. I'm sorry, Judy. I put my hand up. The problem is we're chasing our tail, right? So when Go Math came out, in full transparency, we had this conversation, which is my trepidation from the superintendent's seat to Ms. Kelly, to Mr. Schwartz about Envision, is there's a lot of technology involved in that. One of the reasons why Go Math was our first step, to Mr. Desnoyer's question about it being difficult, we knew the first iteration was difficult, and that's why we didn't go with it, number one. Number two, we had little to zero technology, backbone infrastructure, or hardware for our children or our schools to implement that level of math at that time. Go Math was a jump to the new Common Core standards. It had manipulatives that were in place for kids to use, but it certainly lacked those other resources. Part of it was also because we didn't have the technology in-house in the district, Ms. Brittis, to even support that level of math here in Upper Darby. The shift to the Common Core happened so quickly, and so many school districts that were at 90% or 80% in their math scores at that period of time saw significant drops in 8th grade, in 7th grade, and 6th grade, the first year of that. I think the reality is when a state makes a shift on that level to a new assessment or to anything, they should allow the cohort of kindergartners to work through appropriately those skills, to then by 3rd grade have the first assessment be that year you would have been in the kindergarten program, instead of saying it's 8th grade, this is a heavy Algebra 1 assessment in the 8th grade, and oh, by the way, we want you to take a Keystone exam and a new Common Core test if you're ready to do it. Take them both, they both count, and by the way, teachers, you might not have been trained to implement this. That's what we're faced with. Each one of these programming changes, compliments to you guys, are multi-million-dollar changes to this school district. Forget the technology in the books, the training, the professional development time is a multi-million-dollar investment. So to get 6 years and 6 years to help parents and teachers is a big deal for us. In the past, we didn't have that investment in that. So I think it's a big deal. You're right. The reason why it happened in the past, too, is we didn't have the technology in-house to do it.
Now that you're getting these new laptop carts and the additional technology, is it a possible option to have the school open maybe in the evening so parents can come into school to access that with their child if they don't have the access to that at home?
So part of the grant that we have at Stonehurst as well as Charles Kelly is to enhance parent involvement and to bring them in. So we are looking at purchasing computers for parents to use and open the schools that way. Once we find success using the grant money, we would look at expanding it to other areas and other schools. So we are looking at that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cynthia Isles, 7611 Parkview Road. Actually, some of the parents asked a few of the questions that I had, but with the ELA in particular, my son's in 3rd grade, and we were homeschooling prior to. And one of he goes to Highland Park, and it's amazing in many ways, but one of my great disappointments is the homework. It comes in this paper packet with just work pages. There's no critical thinking. There's nothing deep in depth. He zips through it. And then his teacher's like, he's advanced. So we do the gifted program testing, and he scores slightly below, but he's off the chart in every way. So how is the ELA homework going to change? Because honestly, I mean, I know parents don't want their kid to come home with a pile of homework that's super challenging, but the homework needs to elevate them to me. And this homework is just busy work, is what my kids just get spelling words to fill into a sentence. It feels wasted. So will ELA change that in any way?
I see Mr. Salerno probably wants to jump in. We've had this conversation.
Can I quote you? I couldn't agree with you more, and thank you for bringing this up.
So yeah, we have to change our expectations. We do, and we know that.
In terms of homework, I'm not sure where we'll go with that, but this ELA, these materials require much more reading in depth, much more reading and rereading, and thinking about what you're reading and applying it to something else that you've read. In addition to that, they'll be writing a lot. and
Yeah.
thinking on paper a lot. So I'm hoping that you will see fewer of those worksheets and fill-ins. Like I said during the presentation, I searched through to see, here are the spelling words, where is that spelling test? And how is this going to impact the teacher day? Because I really don't think it should. And I was delighted to see that, on day one, here are the spelling words, and then the kids can go practice that in a center while they're doing reading with their teacher. So we really want, and this is where our PD is important, we really want our teachers to focus on reading skills. If a student needs help with reading, they could get that, but most of our students do well with those. In fact, most of our students do really well on vocab activities, on all of those things that tend to get sent home. They're acing it. If you pull some of our student data, we're in the blue in some of those areas. Where we are not is in the area of writing and critical thinking. So we need to shift things and change that focus, and hopefully
We just have to be careful that we're not, to the comments that everybody's making about parent involvement. I think what's lost in this is we're a prime example. We're out a lot. I've got 3 sons. I'm a lit major. I want to practice reading with my kids, and by the time I get home, most of the time they're in bed asleep, so I can't practice that skill, and I feel like I'm an educator. What am I doing, right? So I think we're lost on the fact that we're overwhelming parents at home, and some of it's this attitude that happens. Educators get into a funk like other people. Well, the parents don't care, they're not engaged. Well, again, I'm out working all the time, and I've got 3 kids, and my youngest might need extra help, but I'm here, and I should be at home practicing those things. So we have to be aware of how do we engage parents, but make it user-friendly, that it's not busy work. It's pushing, it's allowing it, but we have this technology that's supposed to help us make homework better, not much more of a burden on parents, and accessible to build those skills and push and not only develop the practice in that. So I think that's an important piece that we're constantly talking about. Not this idea of just go home and send packets home to do stuff, because there might not be anybody to be there, but I like both of these aspects, that there's a single sign-on that the kids who are far better at technology than a lot of us are can go in there and practice that, and then I can track at home what you're doing, and you're on there. Get on there, log in. I want to see you've done 20 minutes or 15 minutes. That's the benefit of that, and then they have tutorials to help them out if there might not be that parent access to that. That's what we have to push out to get the parent engagement, much like Mrs. Burtis' point. We can't go down the path and say, because we made excuses. Oh, parents are engaged, why do the homework? That's an excuse. Let's find a way to bridge that gap, elevate, have an expectation, but not overwhelm people. Not overwhelm the teacher who feels like the homework goes out and nothing comes back. Make it so that it's really a point, that something can be turned back in to build those skills outside of school. That's what our focus is going to be.
I love that you said that, because even though the critical thinking can feel like it's a lot of work, all the busy work, there are times when we're like rushed to get this little packet where I'm just like, it feels like a waste. And I have a question, though, about so it was very technology-based. Is it app or is it website-based? Do you know? For ELA, will there be like an app? I only say that because I know that there is a digital divide, and there will be parents who don't have a computer, but they very likely will have a phone. And so if it's app-based, it may be more likely that parents could have kids engaged in it, as opposed to, I don't know if it's app-based or website-based.
I'd have to check, but if you could leave me your name or email address, I will get back to you with that. I believe that you can get to the app through your phone.
It is because
Your phone.
the math side of the same thing was.
Right.
I
So
believe it is.
on the online version, you will have access, and your student will have access to the main text, as well as all of the other reading materials. All the leveled readers are there, or the Rigby readers are online. The book club books are online, so they can read at home online, and you can see what they have available to them. The way it's laid out, there's a module that's 3 weeks long, and each module has a set of texts, and the texts vary in genre, as well as reading levels to address the needs of all the kids. And there's a lot that they can be doing with those levels of text. So, I'm hoping that, what you see coming home would be a bit more interesting than you know.
And last
repeating spelling
question, I
words.
know we're all trying to get out of here, but will the kids have the freedom to move to levels as they need to? So will it be like the assessment, you're on 5th grade level, even though you're in 3rd grade, you do 5th grade on ELA? Or is it?
Correct. So it's up to the building, the classroom, as us as the team that puts the curriculum together to help teachers with these decisions. But the teachers will have available to them texts at all of the Lexile levels with a variety of topics. They can sort them by topic or by genre instead of by level, so that all the kids have access to all of them. That was always my wish, actually, with the other program that we had, that students, we had the blue, green, red books, that once we were done with a unit or a week, that those books would be available to all the students, regardless of their level, so they could, choose the easier books or choose the challenging books. That would be up to them. I'm not sure that happened, in every classroom. But these materials are packaged in such a way that these materials are available to all the students in the room. And there's a lot of them.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? All right, seeing none, we'll review the agenda. Mrs. Kelly?
So the first item was the elementary English language arts textbook that would require board action to move it forward.
Everyone's good with that? Yes.
Thank you. The second item is the middle school math textbook recommendation, which also needs board action to move it forward.
Yes, yes.
And then the third is board action required for the 2019-2020 school calendar.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, well then, there's a motion in order for adjournment.
Thank you.
Before we end, I would like to take a moment, if everybody here can wish one of our board members a birthday, a significant birthday coming up, Miss Gentile. Okay. Amazing. Your dedication. Everybody can get one.
Take one.
Okay.
And you can tell everybody how old you're turning. That's.
Do we have any chorus singers here?
Yes.
Right?
Okay, can we all just get started, right? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Judy. Happy birthday to you. Woo!
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Happy birthday, Judy.
Thank you.